Joyce, happy
Hey,
Wednesday.
hey, happy Wednesday, man. Like I have to say, when I saw you come on here, you look very Californian. You're trim, you're tan. Did you get your teeth done? What else happened? I like,
It's funny, not yet, but I've been doing like selfies with people and just send it to the fam chat, and they're noticing everybody's teeth are so white. I feel like I really need to get it done. I'm getting like a little
are you
self-conscious
looking
for
like,
mine.
you're wasting away? Are you eating? You look
Yeah, no,
trim.
no. Listen, I think you saw it. My diabetes reversal. So I'm pumping iron. I'm working out. I'm eating lean. The sunshine thing. It's funny, right? Barcelona is sunny. I feel like I'm spending the same amount of time in the sun, walks, whatever. It hits you differently here.
It's something about California. I think it's the land of rejuvenation.
You know what? We got, I think, 2 more weeks to go. Yeah. No, another week and a half or so that we're hanging here. But yeah, it's been actually pretty fascinating to start building the network here. Tons of different meetings with some super interesting peeps. There's entrepreneurs everywhere, right? I'm sure we'll get one or two of those on the shot one of these days. So
Absolutely.
anyway, let Farina in. I've been excited. Oh, she just left. Oh, here we go. No, she's in. Okay, the Zoom update.
Is she California?
No, Farina is in Germany, I think. Just to
Yeah,
make sure where you're actually today.
in sunny Berlin, I am right now.
Oh,
Sunny
lovely.
Berlin.
Guten Tag.
Sunny. Yeah, oh, yeah, guten Tag. We've been waiting for this because Jim and we saw you at Frontiers Health. I think that was last November. And we got all excited to have you on, and it took us this long because this such a popular show with the millions of listeners. And
Good.
welcome, Farina, and for our millions of listeners and viewers, tell us who you are. Take us all the way back, or wherever you want to get started.
Nah, well there. So you already revealed some of that, right? I guess with your short intro. So I'm Farina. I'm based in Berlin, and I've pretty much my story is that like I've my entire life done nothing else but been involved and curious about building digital companies. And in the last 10 years in the digital healthcare space, and I guess I just love to be Bob the Builder and build the company from scratch
Farina the
and get
Builder.
hooked. Sure, he's the builder and got hooked on health in a way, just because I saw there's a lot of opportunity to really make an impact in this world. Sounds a little bit the way you are. And yeah, other than that, I'm a happy soul living the life and living the sort of life in Berlin.
I was gonna say the happy soul of hacking away at entrepreneurship in health tech or healthcare, right? So other than that.
I think we all share. I love the happy soul that's gonna go. I think that might become a tattoo for us. We saw that's some fantastic.
Helps most of the time, no? To see the world that way.
Did you grow up in Berlin?
I didn't. But Berlin for me is almost like New York. I would compare it to that. Like whenever you ask somebody in New York where they're from, they know I'm from New York. And it's
Okay.
exactly the same in Berlin, I think. So no, I'm not from Berlin. I'm from a small town near Hanover that I moved away from 20 years ago, I think.
Okay.
I'm now almost a Berliner because I've lived here since 10 years.
Set in Berliner. Okay. So and did you when you came to Berlin, did you go for school or did you go for work or did you?
Oh my God, I feel flattered that you're saying I came from school, so that it would mean I would be like 15 years younger. So no, I
Oh,
didn't
two,
have
3 years
to.
younger. Oh no, just really screwed up.
Um, I, I came for pretty much job reasons, I would say, but not necessarily in a way that I came for a specific job. I lived in Australia for quite some time after and also during my studies in optometry. I started my first two companies actually in Sydney.
Oh
And
wow.
then via New York, I really had an urge to go back to Europe because I was missing the variety a little bit of the European culture. And I then decided for Berlin because not only am I German, but also because the startup bubble here there was something happening. And yeah, that's what took me to Berlin. So it's more of a rational decision than anything else.
So what were you studying that your studies took you to Australia? And then I saw something, I wanna dive right in right after that. It was the whole Groupon piece, because I
Mhm.
remember that was, but what were you studying to even get to
Can you-
Australia?
Surfing.
I look like I'm studying
Oh.
surfing right now, but I'm not.
I wish I did. I think I'm never going to be a good surfer. Now I actually just studied economics, and it's in a nutshell. I did my bachelor's in Germany, in Hamburg, and my boyfriend at the time took me on a 3-week vacation because he was doing an exchange. So I ended up doing my master's through like a funded master's program, pretty much in Sydney, because I guess I just needed an excuse to live overseas for some time, and I ended up not staying 10 months, but 5.5 years.
Oh, wow.
So that's the story.
And-
And not
And how did you get to work with Groupon? I think so. I don't know that time, but I remember they were just blowing up and a very sort of consumer oriented business. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I don't want to put, but you know, founded Groupon Australia, or were the first person on the ground.
yeah. Yeah, I was one of the founding team members. To be honest, I think it was a mix of it was just to some extent from lucky timing. And what you mentioned was in not Groupon, but Rocket Internet at the time, that was 2008, 2009, was in a phase of like high ramp up. There were companies stamped out of the ground each and every day almost. And at some stage, and this was what I meant with lucky timing, they discovered that there was this continent with all these kangaroos and stuff on the other side of the world that they had not yet penetrated. And lucky timing for me that I was around at the time, just finishing off my master's degree. And for some reason, in German, I always say Beuteschema. And what that means is like the model of attractiveness for the typical stereotypical types they were looking for, is like young, naive, overambitious, and not really knowing what they are up to yet.
German, ideally German, because I just remember Rocket Internet was Germany. Right?
You're right. You're totally right. There was a little bit racist to that extent as well. So yes, definitely also German.
It's just the expat world, really. The parent company wants their people. That's just the reality.
There are people, and they were mostly looking for BCG consultants, actually, which I wasn't. For some reason, I fell into the scheme as well, probably with the business school and like some 60, in the list. And like I had 6 or 7 people simultaneously approaching me about I had never heard about Rocket Internet. Like, who are these guys? I'd heard of Groupon because I'd worked in a company in Germany for some time. Anyway, long story short, they were coming up to me saying, "You're opening 7 startups at the same time here in Australia." This and that. And it was like the Zalando and the Home24. And one of them was Groupon. And for some reason, I'd heard of Groupon in Germany. I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. Like, can you tell me more? And literally, I think 2 weeks later, I was part of the team and we scaled the company in this like rapid rocket pace of 400 to 340 people in 14 months.
How many?
So it's like this 340 in 14.
Wow.
But this is just the number to give you a feeling for the pace. Not saying this is in any way sustainable.
From
Healthcare, like health tech, it just goes so quick.
Yeah, same, but different.
And so Rocket, I thought Rocket had the rights to do Groupon in Australia.
I thought they were like an incubator, no? Or Rocket, because Rocket was, I don't know.
Rocket was a company builder.
Yeah, company builder.
They were just a plug-and-play system, pretty much. They had copied what Andrew Mason, who was the founder of Groupon in the US, had done in the US. And they were good at being, let's say, not just the copycat. Because copycat to me always seems I just see something.
It sounds negative, but
it sounds negative. But I have to say one thing about Rocket, and there is a lot of things I can say which I think are negative indeed, right? Also ethically and whatever. But one thing, they freaking nailed the operational excellence to do copy paste in a brilliant way.
Oh wow!
yeah.
like just operational putting the puzzle pieces together. And I still, which this is now like 15 years ago, I still benefit from some of the excellence I've seen back then.
And why
100%.
why do you think they were so good at it?
Because they had just done it the Brazilian time, and they'd understood one thing, I think. They really, because they were a company builder, so they were not building one company, focusing on that for 10 years. They were seeing a mass of different companies. At the same time, they understood that like it needed certain puzzle pieces also in terms of like skilled people in the beginning to get some of the excellence for scaling in place. And then they were quite good at challenging what they're doing and were quite radical also in terms of, I think, letting go of people who didn't bring what they were supposed to bring.
Yeah.
And they just built this almost like tool set to build and scale to or hyper growth scale to a certain extent. But from there, also they didn't really know anymore.
Right.
So they reached to a certain point, and then it was clear that it needed to be sold because it's also not meant to last.
Okay.
Listen,
Okay,
they
so
got to be known. I saw a bunch of stuff on Instagram not even that long ago, because it's three brothers, if I'm not mistaken, that started German born, raised, three brothers, and their whole concept, and again, you can take it negatively, positively, copy pasting was their MO. That was their whole business model. It's take something that works somewhere else, create it,
But it's
spin it
not
off.
dumb. Smart.
It's brilliant because you know the consumers are loving it somewhere else already.
You already have a
So-
proof of the market. Exactly. You have a proof of the market. And as we all know, definitely, Eugene, we had already conversations about it. The tough thing is not to identify an idea, which is great, but the hardest part
Ideas
is
are cheap.
to build it, right? To build it properly and scale it. So I guess they nailed the hard part, I think.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think about an example like a Groupon, but in healthcare, health tech, right? What concept was taken somewhere else and quote unquote copied? Maybe the closest is probably some telemedicine stuff, right? Because that's probably it. Ish. I can't think of an example that's so wow, this worked, and then plop it over
They
here.
grabbed this, they popped it over there. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's part of the challenge in health tech. While you're thinking, Farina, because part of the challenge in health tech, and we've all, a lot of the entrepreneurs in healthcare, even if you're running something in Germany, but then you want to hop over, next door to Poland or whatever, ICD codes are different. Everything is just different. And it's not a consumer driven market.
This is the thing. Yeah, I completely agree with you. For every health product that ties into, let's say, the traditional healthcare market, like, and starts to integrate into health insurance, like some of the providers, whatever. But consumer health model, take for example, these eucalyptus guys from Australia.
I've heard of them. Yeah.
Pretty much like a platform. In the end of the day, what they are doing is for men's health, weight loss with GLP-1, and I think to some extent also for women's health. They do let's say a plug and play as well between digital therapy, telemedicine, and actually a white label product that they're sourcing and then supplying in the market. And it's the self-pay model.
It's actually good.
I would say,
it's actually a great point, because I was thinking like a hims and hers in a row, like erectile dysfunction, hair loss, all the stuff that consumers will pay out of pocket. That's very transferable. And to your point, of GLPs and compounded drugs and all of that. But let's get back to you. This was an awesome offshoot, just trying to compare some of the consumer. But Groupon, it was fast and furious, hundreds of people. You stayed sane, maybe. What happened next? You had the resilience. You had the resilience. Yeah.
And I didn't know what I was getting myself into. And then I stayed in consumer. I came with Groupon, I would say, from the consumer side more. And then I stayed in consumer and scaled the company in the marketplaces, mini jobs space. So like which you probably know in the US as a TaskRabbit, like a similar model called Airtasker in Australia.
Okay.
And build that from zero to, I always say, young puberty, meaning we had operations set up and we were the market leader in Australia within 3 years. And then
Wow.
took the company to the US. That's why I moved to New York.
Okay,
and
New York.
soft launched because let's be cautious. Let's not have the balls to. I didn't want to replicate the Rocket Internet move, also because I saw it only took you to a certain point and then it was not meant to last. So I was like, this company could last, and actually took a step back from there and said it's too early. So I did a soft launch, realized it's too early days, and then my heart pretty much took me back to Europe, knowing that in Australia everything was teeny-wise set up in a way. The company actually IPO'd a couple of years ago,
Oh, wow.
so they've done a really
Amazing.
good job after I left as well. And the CEO is still the CEO that I started the company with, and they're gonna come to Germany soon. So I'm really looking forward to close the cycle, like on the right. And then, and this
Oh,
is probably like
Talk about around the world, right? Talk about around the world.
and yeah, the last 10 years, as I said, got hooked in health. Why? Pretty much through a personal encounter with the German healthcare system, not really catering for people with mental health disorders in a timely manner. Started a company in the mental health care space that, bridges the gap for people with mental health disorders, depression, anxiety, or self-opinion, to fill the gap for these people to have effective treatment pretty much immediately while waiting for a psychotherapist or for really mild disorders also to maybe make it complete, but really about filling the gap. So this is therapeutics and build the company from zero with psychologists 2015, so 10
wow.
years ago.
10 years ago.
Wow. Yeah. I just sold it, by the way, a month ago.
Congrats. I saw that. Yeah.
Alphabet.
Congrats. What's
Thank you for that.
interesting, we met when I was at Think and Dare, right? And I think the concept of taking a drug to market takes about a decade, right? And I think the hypothesis was that for digital and digital health, you can spin things up so quickly and it's only a few months or a year. The reality is to build a good business or a great business still takes a decade, right? Roughly.
Or more.
Or more.
Or more.
Yeah.
Which I think,
Yeah.
by the way, is an interesting one already, because that means already that like some of the funding options out there are not necessarily matched.
They're
They
not
don't match.
aligned. They don't match.
Yeah.
They're not aligned. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the expectation. And so that's interesting. But take it back.
But maybe just
Yeah.
the name of the company was Selfie. Yeah. Okay. So it was Selfie that you started in 2015, and then you just sold a month ago.
I sold it a month ago, and I stepped out operationally about 3 years ago.
Okay.
Once, I would say, there was a turning point in the company where, again, happy to dig into it a little bit deeper, but we did a lot of Bob the Builder stuff from the beginning in terms of business models, tried a lot of stuff. And 7 years in, I think we're at a point where everything was stable, and that's where my magic started to diminish.
Okay.
And it was a tough split up because it was quite an emotional topic for me, but I realized at some point that my superpowers are not needed as much anymore as they were at the beginning. And then I stepped out in 2021.
Okay.
So interesting theme here. You take the company to that puberty adolescent level where, if you're stable, you're still going through it a bit, but like you're stabilizing. And then it's interesting because many entrepreneurs don't have that self-reflection, right? And that's always the challenge a lot of times.
Or maybe.
Or the
that
fun out of
statement's
it.
Yeah, but it's also it's a judgmental. The entrepreneurs don't have the self-reflection. It's a judgmental. They don't want to sell. They don't want to sell their teenagers. They don't want to sell their.
Yeah.
And you need to have also people. Yeah, it's a good point, Jim. I think it's also the point of, we were 3 founders, right? First of all. And I think you got to realize at some point, like, where if we all look, and then we're the management level that we build under us, how much of the day in the daily doing, how much magic do I still bring to the table, and how much do my eyes still sparkle, honestly said, after 7 years. And it was Eugene knows because I met him in between. I think I was quite honest with some of the struggles as well that we were facing at the time, because I'm not a big fan of just showing off glamorously on how easy everything is. And I can tell you as well that after 7 years, I was also looking for somebody to take over, came with full power for the current phase that we still, because the team is not an adult yet. I just realized I would not. And I remember we were playing a rock, paper, scissors with my one co-founder, because we're asking like who can step out first, because we knew the other person would need to carry the weight.
Yeah.
And luckily at that point in time that was me.
You're like,
Me,
luckily.
personally.
Drew,
Luckily. Last comment on that, it took me a year. I replaced my role with 2 people in the end, taking over different parts, because I'm a little bit of a hybrid, because I've done traditional marketing in the past, but also built everything that was sales, B2B oriented. And I couldn't find anyone to take over both, because it was always somebody rather marketing or rather sales. But once I found them, I had a really good feeling of, okay, I think Kit is in good hands, and I can go back to the magic.
Morning school. Send it.
Maybe just a quick question. So in that first 7 years, because if I'm not mistaken, Softly was the first digital therapeutic or CBT, that got the DIGA approval and reimbursement.
Yep, sure. That's true.
What was that? First of all, congrats, because it's working through all the politics, through your own business, paving the way, right, for many other startups in not just, by the way, in Germany, but in EU broadly.
Yeah, in France, not here.
Can you give us a little bit like that aha moment of, oh shit, this is happening? Did you build for DIGA, or was it timing, and how did you even navigate a lot of this, given, because I don't think you don't have a clinical background, right? So that's a component of rigorous clinical trials and all of that. So just, I'll park that with you.
Yeah, the DIGA stuff really was not foreseeable when we founded the company at all.
Yeah, I think so.
Not at all. Like when we started the company, we deliberately decided on going direct to consumer first, but we knew from the beginning that in Germany, direct to consumer will not make us win the market. Winning the market to that extent that our initial vision was not to become the biggest consumer health brand for mental health, but to really solve this treatment gap. And I guess coming to where are the conflicts, this is already something where if you look at us almost raising 30 million funding with traditional VCs, again, it's a little bit of a contrast in itself already, because our vision was always and I think this was already where some of the learning is, by the way, coming to that later, but in terms of raising so much money. Anyway, long story short, did we know DIGA? Did we build for DIGA? Not at all. We built for direct to consumer in the beginning, but not with the thought in mind that this would be our business model for the mid or long term, but more for the short term, to gather some data, get the problem solution built, in place, build a product that really does what it's supposed to be, and see if there is a willingness of the consumer, but realizing really quickly that the people willing to buy are the people highly suicidal. And for that, obviously, an online therapy solution is not sufficient. Realized that super quickly. I would say even 3 months in, we'd realized like direct to consumer, as we already thought, would not take us to a substantial
size.
Yeah, to a substantial top line that would take us to the next level. From there, we started in parallel, I think, chase, and I'm saying chasing on purpose because I'm not saying we succeeded necessarily. B2B corporate for pretty much prevention, corporate health topics, pharma, looking to you, Helena, and at the same time, health insurance. And we're chasing all the 3 simultaneously and try to also build a product that caters for all the 3 simultaneously. Interesting, by the way. I think next point of what product are you building for 3 completely different audiences at payers, and with that target audiences, that we did it also like purposefully because we were wondering like what of the 3 will actually stick and take us to the level of where we wanted to be. And that phase was probably a year and a half of us building 3 business or payment models at the same time, and a product that tried to cater for it all. And what happened then? During that time, the health minister changed in Europe.
Right. That's right.
Right. So it was again a little bit of lucky timing, to be honest. And at the time where DIGA started to become a conversation, our main business model at the time had been the selective contract with the health insurance. We at some stage, we won like a competition and had our first pilot contract with an insurance. We were so noisy about there's a problem in the market. We always, I think, with a lot of willpower, believed in if this solution helps, somebody eventually will pay for it. It was a little bit naive, I think. And then
And then
we
there's
had-
all, sorry, on the sick fund side, and for our listeners who are not from Germany, insurance plans, insurance companies.
Yeah.
On the 6 month side, there's this activation challenges. There's a lot of stuff going on with DIGA and the knowledge by the prescribers to even do it, and lots of questions. So maybe, and we got to keep it tight today, unfortunately, but quick thoughts on where DIGA is and where it's going, or your perception. And I know you've stepped away directly from the business at this point, a couple of years back.
Yeah, even though I still work a lot with health companies to exactly nail this point. I'm still close to the market to that extent. DIGA is in Germany in a toddler stage, I would say. And what you're referring to is exactly the case that, like, I always say it's a payment pathway, but it's not a growth model at all. And it means even though you're listed as a DIGA in Germany, which by the way is quite a rocky road to get listed, and the institution who's supposed to get you accredited doesn't know exactly what they're doing either all the time. Let's see if they're listening, but I would also openly say this because
it's a BFAR, right? BFAR. Okay.
Yeah, a bureaucratical giant, and I'm not blaming them because they are not equipped to do it either. They were just thrown this topic and they were like, how do we do this? So that's the other thing. Getting listed is already a rocky road. And the second thing is, once you're listed, we were listed, I was 6 DIGAs. So we're with the most DIGAs in the market listed. So you would say we nailed that. And I would say, yes, we did. At the same time, up to today, and this is 10 years in, with 2025. If you look at the numbers that are coming via DIGA in terms of like patient numbers, the growth is slow.
Right. Yeah.
All slow, whatever you want to call it. Why is that? Because a DIGA needs to be prescribed by a doctor, which means you have to be diagnosed for something, right? Whereas DIGA. And then you look deeper without going too much into it, but what is the incentive for the doctor? What is the information degree that a doctor needs to have in order to prescribe a DIGA? And let's say the German market of, the German doctors, in the end, like you talk about which doctors we talk about, in self-abuse case, mostly GPs, general practitioners. And I guess as a small startup, it's extremely tricky to do a proper penetration of the GP market in Germany. And the political setup right now is that the health minister has changed again, right? Since DIGA came into place, for one, we have a new one now. And it's a little bit, I don't want to compare Trump and Obama, and I don't want to say this is the same in Germany with healthcare, but it's a little bit like that. Like some of the stuff Obama put in place, Trump is now flipping around. And I think it's a limit.
Just in general nature of, I'll call it executive management, it's undo things that were done before. It's not because they're right, wrong, or whatever. It's a cycle. But I honestly, I do almost wish we scheduled long form because I think there's just so many lessons. We can keep double clicking on every one of these. But let's bring to now and Robin, and you alluded to you're helping other health tech companies. So maybe tell us what you're up to these days quickly, and then we'll go to the last famous Jim Joyce question.
With maybe just one sentence in background, besides Groupon, where I naively jumped into like a train that I didn't know which place was the train is gonna hit in the time that I was sitting in there. I'm still enjoying it. I always jumped on board with companies and founded companies that kind of I related to the problem. And I think with Robin, it's the same thing that like me as like the founder of, I don't know, whether it was Groupon, Airtasker, the company afterwards was Self-Abuse. I was always wishing for hands-on senior guide who could operationally support me to build some of the growth structure, but just really building the stuff with the seniority to know what they're doing, stepping out, and I could take over with my internal team the really senior structures these people, rigid structures these people have built to allow, but you can't afford it as a startup founder because these guys are usually like, if you pay the salary, it's just it's just not there.
The
And
burn
also,
goes way up.
it's like this. And the second thing is also believing in a world where, and it's something I hope I always say, do it the way you want it to be done. Step out when you're really good. Step in when you're really good. Step out when you know your superpower is not there as much anymore. And I guess that's the second thing is like, focusing, bringing people in with a certain superpower for a certain stage, but then other people can take over with another superpower, right? And I think this is just the way I see the world. See where you have the most impact. And that's not Robin. It's like a tiny, it's never meant to be like a consultancy squad or anything. We're like an operational entrepreneur squad that love to build growth structures to last in the phase where really shit hits the fan, aka usually around the Series A-ish, where you really have to prove stuff you promised before.
Got to get to that milestone. So you guys roll up the sleeves. You're the growth hackers and operators, and then you step back.
pretty much.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
6-12 months in, we usually step out.
Awesome.
And then the structures are in place to take them to the next level.
Love it.
Fantastic.
Jim, back
All
to
right.
you.
Marina.
Let's do this.
So Farina,
Oh,
go with
sorry.
me. Yeah. Go with me in the future. So you get this after, the Shot of Digital Health podcast blasts. We get to 1 million subscribers based edition. And Eugene says to you, because his relationship with Frontiers Healthcare, says, I need you to keynote. This is a few years from now. I need you to keynote a conference because famously at Frontiers, the whole DIGA system was launched, right? Like it was promoted and launched famously at DIGA. So they're doing a special, Roberto's doing a special event that he wants you to launch, and it's called Chasing Magic. And it's all about you chasing magic and how to bring digital healthcare companies. DIGA is wide open based on all the paths that you've created, and new companies are launching in. Doctors are adopting technology, and they bring you in to keynote this talk. As you give this talk and you talk about integrating your learnings from launching Groupon and TaskRabbit like services to digital health system and this, and you give this talk and everyone's just enjoying the talk. But then as you come off the stage at the end of it, this one kind of fantastically charismatic, talented young woman comes running towards you and says, Farina, I have to talk to you. You don't understand. I grew up in a small town in Germany. I moved to Berlin, and I ended up in Sydney, and I'm now about to launch my first digital healthcare company, and I want to follow in your footsteps. What's the one piece of advice you would give her?
Well, sorry. I would tell her something super personal, and I would tell her that what she thinks is not necessarily always the truth. And what I mean by that is that particularly in healthcare, you sometimes have walls where there are no walls, and you don't have, like, you sometimes don't see walls where there are massive walls. And I think just being open to thinking where I believe that the wall could be no wall. And this is, by the way, good with the DIGA example. Like, I would have never believed when I founded the company that at some point the statutory healthcare system in Germany would reimburse our solution Germany-wide. I would have said to you, I think you were on something else. But so I think this challenging your own thoughts is, I think, is magic for an entrepreneur in general.
So walking through invisible walls, or visible, either way.
I love it. Challenging your own thought. That's beautiful.
Love that.
That's beautiful.
Farina, thank you very much. We're so glad to have you on today. It was so much fun. And to all the listeners and viewers, hit subscribe, pass it on, and hopefully see you next week.
Thanks, guys. Enjoy your evening. Ciao.